Good Monday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for May the 22nd. Today we are reading together in Deuteronomy chapter 18, which just continues this main center section of Moses' final addresses to the Israelite nation. In this particular chapter, as it is divided up for us, he's going to detail some of the festivals that they needed to make sure they were aware of, make sure that they were participating in. We're going to see that in verses 1 through 17. And then we're actually going to stop a couple of verses short today. We're going to stop in verse number 20 of Deuteronomy 16 here because, just quite frankly, I don't understand why they decided to put the chapter break where they did. I don't know. I'm not going to second guess anything, but we're just going to go ahead and pick up tomorrow reading together in chapter 16 and verse 21. Since that section of idolatry goes well together and also goes well with the following section after that. So for today, we're going to read Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verses 1 through 20. Let me get the text up on the screen for us, and we'll be reading along together. Appreciate so much you taking time to read along with me on this Monday. Let's read here Deuteronomy 16, verse number 1. Set aside the month of Abib and observe the Passover to Yahweh your God, because Yahweh your God brought you out of Egypt by night in the month of Abib. Sacrifice to Yahweh your God a Passover animal from the herd or flock in the place where Yahweh chooses to have his name dwell. Do not eat leavened bread with it. For 7 days you are to eat unleavened bread with it, the bread of hardship, because you left the land of Egypt in a hurry, so that you may remember for the rest of your life the day you left the land of Egypt. No yeast is to be found anywhere in your territory for 7 days, and none of the meat you sacrifice in the evening of the first day is to remain until morning. You are not to sacrifice the Passover animal in any of the towns Yahweh your God has given you. Sacrifice the Passover animal only in the place where Yahweh your God chooses to have his name dwell. Do this in the evening as the sun sets at the same time of day you departed from Egypt. You are to cook and eat it in the place Yahweh your God chooses. And you are to return to your tents in the morning. Eat unleavened bread for 6 days. On the 7th day, there is to be a solemn assembly to Yahweh your God. Do not do any work. Verse number 9, you are to count 7 weeks, counting the weeks from the time the sickle is first put to the standing grain. You are to celebrate the festival of weeks to Yahweh your God with a free will offering that you give in proportion to how Yahweh your God has blessed you. Rejoice before Yahweh your God in the place where he chooses to have his name dwell. You, your son and daughter, your male and female slave, the Levite within your city gates, as well as the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow among you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. Carefully follow these statutes. Verse 13, you are to celebrate the festival of shelters for 7 days when you have gathered in everything from your threshing floor and winepress. Rejoice during the festival, you and your son and daughter, your male and female slave, as well as the Levite, the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow within your gates. You are to hold a 7-day festival for Yahweh your God in the place he chooses, because Yahweh your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hands, and you will have abundant joy. All your males are to appear 3 times a year before Yahweh your God in the place he chooses, at the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, the festival of shelters. No one is to appear before Yahweh empty-handed. Everyone must appear with a gift suited to his means, according to the blessing Yahweh your God has given you. Appoint judges and officials for your tribes in all your towns Yahweh your God is giving you. They are to judge the people with righteous judgments. Do not deny justice or show partiality to anyone. Do not accept a bribe, for it blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Pursue justice and justice alone, so that you will live and possess the land Yahweh your God is giving you. And that is Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verses 1 through 20. Again, we'll pick up the last couple of verses tomorrow as we read together from chapter 17. But again, here within these first 17 verses, we have basically a good chunk of Israel's religious calendar. If you want to look more about the dates of these festivals, you can go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus 23 talks about the dates. If you want to talk more about the details concerning the sacrifices and such, you can go read Numbers chapter 28 and 29. The three festivals that are mentioned here, number one are Passover, number two, Pentecost, and then number three, the festival of shelters or booths or tabernacles. It goes by various names. Concerning the Passover, this was the remembrance of the deliverance that Yahweh gave to the people as they were being exited out of Egypt. The eating of unleavened bread reminded them of the swiftness, the quickened nature of their departure, that they did not even have time to let the bread set, that they had to make what they could and take off very, very quickly. And it was important that they remembered the fact that they left the land of Egypt, that God was the one who brought them up out of the lands. There is reference here to, again, participating in the sacrifice in the place that Yahweh would make his name dwell. Again, it's good to mention from time to time as we're going through these chapters that this first shows up back here in chapter 12. It is first mentioned the place Yahweh your God chooses from all your tribes to put his name for his dwelling and go there. Was the tabernacle as it moved about. So then went to Gilgal, then went to Shechem, then went to Shiloh, and finally the tabernacle is going to turn into the temple, this physical stationary structure, and it is going to be where all these sacrifices are going to take place. So we're going to see that eventually. They're to do all these sacrifices there. Most of it is centered around the temple, or again, the tabernacle previous to the temple being established. And of course, within this one is the command to not do any work, and a solemn assembly is included as well. The Festival of Weeks, or Pentecost, is up next. This celebrates the giving of the law. This would remind them of the time they sinned at Sinai. But there's also involved here some giving of the first fruits to remember God's blessings for them. In verse 11, it says that you need to rejoice before Yahweh your God in the place where he chooses to have his name dwell. There should be rejoicing concerning the law. Again, we often, I think, unfortunately, view the law as nothing more than a burden. It was a bad thing, but that's not the case at all. Again, the law helped, yes, to highlight sin and to identify places in their lives where they fell short of God's glory, but that was a good thing in that it helped them to understand just how gracious God had been to them. And the fact, too, that the law separated Yahweh's people from the rest of every other people. One place, I'll mention that right now. I'll skip ahead real fast to the ending section, verses 18, 19, 20. It talks about not accepting a bribe. That was very uncommon among ancient peoples, for there to be a law concerning not accepting a bribe. That was just something that was expected. That was something that was allowed, that the rich would get richer and the rich really controlled things by their wealth. Not so among God's people. It's different in their nation than other nations. And they should have been very thankful for that. Again, those who are less fortunate need to be included in this as well, need to be blessed by this observance. The Levites, the slaves, the resident alien, the fatherless, the widow. Again, carefully follow these statutes. It makes sense for that to be mentioned here by Moses. Again, this is a reminder, this is a refreshing course, you might say, a refresher course, you might say, for the people concerning what would be expected of them in the law, or expected of them from the law while they're in the land. So again, whenever we think about Pentecost, be careful to follow these statutes. It was given on Sinai. Don't forget them. Follow them well. Then the festival of shelters / booths / tabernacles is mentioned in verses 13 through 17. And this is to commemorate their time wandering in the wilderness. And again, there is rejoicing that's supposed to take place here. Rejoice during your festival, verse 14. And in fact, you will have abundant joy in doing this. Remember how God cared for you while you were in the wilderness. Remember how he cared for you even though you were part of a sinful people. You think about the wilderness wanderings, those 40 years, you might think of that really with a bad taste in your mouth because of the reason for that being a reality to begin with. But remember instead how God provided for you, how God cared for you, how he gave you every single one of your needs. Yes, he might have tested you at times, but he always provided. God provides. God is the good gift giver. And then verse 16, these are the 3 times they are to appear. All the males are to appear before Yahweh, festival of unleavened bread, which is Passover, festival of weeks, which is Pentecost, and then finally the festival of shelters. No one is to appear before Yahweh empty-handed. You must appear with some sort of gift, a gift equivalent to how much God has blessed you with. So at these times, focus on giving back to God for all the ways in which he has blessed you. Every single one of these festivals, there is an aspect in which it is a reminder of how God has provided. God provided Exodus from Egypt. God provided a law to separate the people. God provided for them while they're in the wilderness. Remember God's graciousness to you. And of course, during these festival times, the people might be on their extra special best behavior. They might give an extra special effort to pursue righteousness. But the ending of our section today, 18, 19, 20, is going to talk about how that's needed at all times. Righteousness is always something that is needed. Always strive for righteousness, especially if you are in a leadership position. There needs to be honor and dignity among those who are judges or officials of the tribes in all your towns that Yahweh is giving you. They are to judge with righteous judgment. Again, right between them and God, right between them and their fellow man. Do not deny justice. Do not show partiality. Do not accept a bribe. You don't do that. No, instead you pursue with everything justice. Pursue with everything justice alone. And in doing so, again, we have this blessings and cursings. We have these promises and blessings type of language. In doing so, you will live and possess the land Yahweh your God is giving you. Live well, and God will bless you. That's what we see here, finishing up this section in chapter 16 and verses 18 through chapter 16 verses 18 through 20. And again, tomorrow we will read verses 21 and 22 along with chapter 17, just because that subject matter really goes well together. Again, whenever we think about these festivals and these special days that Israel was to remember and commemorate and celebrate and rejoice in, it was in recognition for what God has done for them. Do we do that from time to time? Do we take time to just think about maybe a specific time in our lives or a specific situation in our lives that it's abundantly clear that God has blessed us in some way? Do we take time to appreciate that? All of us certainly could just take time to be thankful that we are children of him, that we are his children, that he has blessed us with the forgiveness of sins, that we're able to live with the hope of eternal life and salvation. All of that should cause us to pause from time to time, probably more often than just time to time, to pause constantly and simply give God thanks for the gracious ways in which he has blessed us in our lives. I hope you'll take time to do that today. Please join me tomorrow as we read together again here in Deuteronomy. We'll be reading again, beginning in chapter 16, verse 21, going through all the way through chapter 17. There's a really important text here in chapter 17 concerning appointing a king. We're really going to focus on that tomorrow, and I hope you'll tune in for that reading. Thanks again for being here today. Have a great rest of your Monday, everyone. Take care, and God bless.